We're joined now by the president of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget and head of the Campaign to Fix the Debt, Maya MacGuineas. Maya, welcome. You have some new numbers, a new report. What does it say?
We do, John. Okay, so thanks for having me. What we have been doing through this campaign is looking at the promises of all of the candidates, and along with those promises come price tags. So we've been doing this for over a year now. We've looked at the candidates from Ted Cruz to Bernie Sanders. What we're going to come out with tomorrow is our first big deep dive comparing the policies of Trump and Clinton. So we'll talk about this more, but what we find is both candidates, at a time when our debt is already at record levels, would not put forth a plan that would put the debt on a sustainable path. But that said, the plan of Donald Trump would add much, much more to the debt than Hillary Clinton.
Why? Why Trump's more than Clinton?
So when you look at Donald Trump's plan, it is really all about tax cuts. He has very significant tax cuts, almost $10 trillion added to the debt. And if you want to go that route, if you want to add a great amount to the debt through tax cuts, you need to cut government spending. But in fact, his plan that has spending in health care, in immigration costs, and importantly in veterans benefits, and the biggest part of his plan, more interest on the debt because he borrows so much, actually increases spending. And what Donald Trump has said is that, don't worry, I will have very large economic growth, and that will get rid of the problem. So we looked at those numbers as well. And what we found is that because there's such a huge amount added to the debt, again, over the 10 years, looking at his numbers, the total, including what we're on track to already borrow, would be $20 trillion. He would add about $11 trillion to the debt on top of $10 trillion that's already there. You would have to grow the economy by 10% a year. That's 5 times as much as the impartial estimators are already projecting, and it's well above the record we've ever had. So that's, just because you say it doesn't make it true. That's not going to happen.
And just to remind some people about where we are in the deficit and budget picture, regardless of what candidates propose, there is an existing challenge that the American government faces, right? An existing, you've got to balance the books, regardless of what new things you propose.
No, there really is, and our debt situation is really bad. And honestly, you wouldn't know it from how candidates or the parties talk about it, because if there's one tiny area of bipartisan agreement, it's that nobody wants to talk about this issue because it's hard. But we are at record levels of debt, the highest it's been since we came out of World War II. We're on track to add $10 trillion over the next 10 years if we do nothing before any of these promises come true. The fastest growing part of the budget is interest payments, and that's squeezing out all other important parts of the budget. And this affects American families. If you want to fix the economy, if you want to do all the things we're talking about in this campaign, we need a leader who's also going to have a plan to deal with the debt, and so far we don't have that from either major candidate.
Explain why there is a cost to delay, to not having this conversation.
So there's so many reasons that the debt actually affects voters. One thing is, just last week, we heard from the trustees of Social Security and Medicare that these two important programs need to have changes to stay solvent. And yet, both candidates are not putting forth plans to secure Social Security. Donald Trump has said he won't touch the program, except for waste, fraud, and abuse, which is not going to fix the program. And Hillary Clinton has been talking about expanding it in targeted ways, but has made no mention of a plan to save Social Security. The longer we wait, the more expensive it becomes. And in all other areas of the budget, actually having these high debt levels, it slows the growth of the economy. It slows wages. It squeezes out the important priorities we have. Nobody can implement the plans they want if we don't have reasonable debt levels. And importantly, you're not prepared for crises when they come along. Brexit is a great reminder of why we need to have a debt that's under control, because emergencies will happen, because downturns will happen, and you want to have a strong fiscal house to get started.
Last question, about 30 seconds left. If I'm a voter and I'm on the rope line and one of these candidates comes to me, what question do I ask them to get them to focus on this issue?
I mean, this really is so important because it underlies all the other issues. But how would they deal with the unsustainable national debt? What they put in their first budget that would bring the debt down to a sustainable level? I'm not even saying you have to balance the budget, but get it to the point where the debt's not growing faster than the economy, and that's going to require real policy choices. These choices have costs, and so far the costs of both candidates would make the situation worse, not better. We're going to have to change course.
All right, Maya MacGuineas, thanks so much for being with us.
John.
And we'll be back in a moment.